Obviously, from your description of the show, people eating themselves out of murals and things like that, whatever, there may be no behavior where the show seems to have gone over the top. But how do you deal with this issue of season after season being true to that character without doing what most television shows do eventually, which is becoming some kind of parody of themselves as they...
We reinvent the show every season. So the first season was sort of the meeting of the characters, and ending with the Will Graham character realizing who Hannibal Lecter was, and then season 2 he was the man who knew too much, and then had to go to extreme depths to seduce the devil, as it were. And then at the end of season 2, all of the main characters are lying bleeding in pools of blood, and our hero walks out in the rain, baptismal-like, and gets on a plane with Agent Scully, and God knows what they're doing. So, so it's a brand new season yet again, and that was the idea, is that we also very much wanted to consider this as, these are the lost novels. These are the lost Thomas Harris novels that were not published before Red Dragon. So we will eventually get to Red Dragon. But everything now is, the fun of it for me as a fanboy is to sort of take characters, and I frequently describe the writing staff and myself as Thomas Harris mashup DJs, where we're spinning things from different books. We're taking the track from Silence of the Lamb and playing it with the lyrics from Red Dragon, and mixing it up in a way where everybody has seen these movies, but we want to reinvent dynamics so that they are fresh to the show and not necessarily totally reliant on the literature, but inspired by and consistent with the tone. So it is, the fun of it is reinventing for another season is great, but you kind of go like, shit, all of those crutches that we had now, we don't have a case of the week anymore, so we don't have that. But the fun of it is we'll figure it out, and you know, once you have swam across the moat and know that you can make it to the other side, you'll get through it. You'll know you'll survive. So that's part of it, and not feeling like, oh God, we're going to drown.
Right. I mean, I think, Scott, you mentioned this in the old days, which means yesterday. Essentially, now the way things are moving, if you had a series that lasted 2, 3, 4 years, you were pretty clear, as long as the ratings held out, that you were going to be fine story-wise. But there are an increasing number of these kinds of series, not yours, but others, which actually do burn out after 2 seasons or so, because there is no guarantee anymore.
And the traditional television model is that you have the same format, that there is comfort in the familiar, and there's a reason that CSI does so incredibly well, because people want to go, they want to see a bad guy get caught at the end, they want to see a crime solved, they want to see a clue found, and that's exactly what they want, and that's exactly what they get, and it does gangbusters. And there's that traditional approach, and then there's a variety of approaches, whether it's a wonderful soap opera set in a post-apocalyptic zombie world is another way to tell a different kind of story. Like there's more eagerness to embrace the soap operatic, and which I find very satisfying, because the point of television is that you want to see what happens to the characters after the credit sequence. And my first job was Star Trek. And so Star Trek had, there was a reset button at the end of every episode, and they had to go back to scratch. And there was an edict that this episode has to stand alone and follow the format and cannot build or reference too much onto things that happened in the past, which I became very sort of like, it felt claustrophobic, because we would have an episode where a character would have a religious experience and become a born-again Klingon, and then in the next episode it was back to status quo, and that I feel like everybody up here is doing something different by building. It's fun to lay a brick down and then lay the next brick down, as opposed to lay a brick down and then go back and just paint the bricks a different color.
Big creative advantages, but a lot of risk and something like that.
It's trickier, but it's also so much more creatively satisfying, because it's challenging, and if you're not terrified that it's not going to work, I think you're probably doing something wrong, and it's good to live in that terror.